Well, good afternoon. It's great to be speaking to you again. Welcome back to my lounge and to our fourth Thursday Thoughts video. Just to catch you up, if you haven't attended a Thursday Thoughts before, my name's Simon. I'm one of the leaders here at Ascot Life Church, and we wanted to create these videos really because we're aware that during this time of things not being normal, when our lives are interrupted, maybe when we've got a bit more space in our lives, this could also be a time when we start thinking about the bigger questions in life. Questions about who we are, about what our place in the universe is, what our role is, maybe even questions about God and faith and this sort of thing. And so we're just hoping every Thursday lunchtime for a few minutes to just take a look at one of the big questions we might be asking, so that we can maybe just offer some responses to those questions. And if you were with us last week, you remember we looked at the question, I'm a good person, why do I need God? And today we're looking at a similar question really, which is this: I'm a happy person, why do I need God? You know, if my life's going well, if I'm content, if I've got all the things I want going right, why should I look into God? Why should I bother looking into Christianity if life's going all right, if things are okay? I guess one of the ways we see religion in the modern world is as a psychological crutch. It's something that you can lean on for comfort and support when things are going bad. But if your life's going all right, if you're at peace within yourself, then it's kind of unnecessary. It's just not really needed. That's how we see religion, isn't it? It's there for the people that need it, there for those who want it. So believe what you want to believe, but ultimately it's just made up. It's just a crutch for some people who need it. And so if I'm happy, if I'm doing well, why should I bother looking into it, we think? And I guess this view of God as some form of psychological crutch is compounded by the fact that many people do end up coming to God during a period of crisis in their life. That's often what happens. The church across the nation is seeing many people stream into its live services at the moment. Why? Well, it's because we're in a crisis. It's because things aren't going our way. And maybe you know people in your own life who have become Christians, and that whole story was started because of some suffering, because of some trial they went through. Maybe you're even watching this video looking into Christianity because you're in a crisis, because we're all in a crisis. And I guess the fact that some people come to God during a period of suffering in their lives could lead us to the conclusion that, well, God is just there for those who are suffering. He's just there to offer some comfort and support when life's going bad. But if it's going well, we don't need him. That's one conclusion we could make. But I think there's also an alternative conclusion we could make, which is this: maybe the people who suffer and then reach out to God, maybe they are actually discovering in themselves a need for God that was there all along. Maybe the reason that crisis and suffering makes us reach out for God is not because it suddenly births a need for God, but because this crisis unveils in us a need for God that was actually there all along. A need for God that actually we all share and all have, even if we're not always aware of it. Just think about this for a few moments with me. Isn't it true that often our greatest needs in life are not felt by us until it's too late? Isn't it true as human beings that we're not often aware of our biggest, deepest needs until those needs have gone on for too long? This would actually be my first response to this question. I'm happy. Why do I need God if I don't feel a need for God? Well, I'd say, isn't it true that often you have real deep needs that you have to attend to before you feel the needs? I'll just give a few examples of how this might work in our lives. I've got to say that the first example is a little bit gross It's a story from a few years ago, so if you're watching your lunch, maybe pause or skip over this bit, come back to it later when you're not eating. You have been warned, but the story comes from, as I say, a few years ago in my life, when me and Eliz, my wife, were celebrating her birthday at her parents' home. And because it was a really hot day, my wife was born in June, so it was in the summer, we spent our whole day outside. There was a paddling pool in the garden, there was a picnic table, we could play some games and stuff. And so we spent our whole day outside enjoying the sun, and really it felt like a perfect day. It felt like just a wonderful birthday celebration. It wasn't until we got back into the car to go home that I realised something was desperately wrong. In fact, it turned out what had happened was that during that day I'd got sunstroke. And so when I got back into the car, I started feeling very, very sick. And to cut a long story short, what ended up happening was by my feet there was a box with Liz's birthday cake in it. And I had to pick up this box, take the cake out and hold it in one hand, and with the other hand I was throwing up into this Jacob's cream cracker box. I can still remember it now. And the rest of the journey we just had these two things in my hand, a box of sick and a cake. What more could you want from a birthday? And that highlighted to me the thing I've just said, that often our greatest needs aren't felt until it's too late. I had two big needs that entire day. I had a need for water, I was dehydrated, and I had a need for shade. I needed to put a hat on or go inside or something. But because I didn't feel these needs, because I didn't feel necessarily thirsty or in need of shade, I didn't attend to them. Because often our greatest needs, we're not aware of them until it's too late. That's why our mums always used to say to us, didn't they? Drink before you get thirsty. Because if you wait until you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Our greatest needs often not felt by us until it's too late. I guess another example of this could be, if you were to go to the doctor just for a cough or a cold or something, and they do a scan on you just to be safe, and they discover in you this malignant tumour. They would say to you, I hope, we need to get you in surgery, we need to treat you, you need some emergency treatment here. Now you could respond to that and say, what are you talking about? I don't feel sick, I just feel like I've got a cold, I don't feel like there's a life-threatening tumour inside me. And the doctor would respond, well, if we wait until you feel the effects of this tumour, it will be too late, it will be too far gone. We have to act now before you feel the need. As I say, often our greatest needs aren't felt by us until it's too late. And so why should we assume that just because we don't feel a need for God doesn't mean that a need isn't actually there? I mean, maybe if God is our greatest need, our need for God could be like those other great needs. It could be a need that often we're not aware of until a bit later down the line, until it's too late maybe. I mean, just think about those needs that I was suffering earlier from dehydration and shade. The fact is, I didn't attend to those needs because I was distracted with other things. I kind of suppressed them, covered them up. Well, don't you think maybe the reason we don't feel a deep panging for God is not because the need isn't there, but it's because we cover it up. We suppress it with other things. In fact, this is exactly what the Bible says we do. In Jeremiah 2, which is a book in the Old Testament, God speaks about his people, and he says this. He says, they have committed a double evil. They've abandoned me, the fountain of living water, and dug cisterns for themselves, cracked wells that cannot hold water. God's saying there that two things. One, we were created for him. We were created to find sustenance, satisfaction, joy in him. He's like a fountain of living water who gives us life, nourishes us. But that all of us have abandoned him. We've abandoned the fountain of living water. But the reason we don't go every day feeling a deep thirst for God is because we kind of meet this thirst with other things. We stuff our hungry bellies with other things which kind of meet the need. We look to cracked wells that have some water in them. I guess some examples of this could be money. Many of us, fill our need for God with things like money, accumulating wealth, or maybe it's career, or maybe it's relationships, or maybe for some of us it's just kind of small pleasures. Just binge watching Netflix, eating lots, drinking lots. These are kind of small things that we can kind of satisfy ourselves with temporarily, which kind of stave off this greater need. And maybe the reason we don't feel a need for God is because we're kind of meeting that need slightly with other things. Now, you may say to me, well, what's wrong with that? If some people find their joy met in God and others find it in these other things, who are we to tell them to stop? Why should I not be able to find my joy in those things? Well, it's because ultimately they can't satisfy your deepest need. God describes these things, doesn't he, as cracked wells that can't hold water. There might be a bit of water in them, a bit of sustenance to keep you going. Netflix can kind of keep you happy for a bit. But ultimately, God says it's a cracked well that can't hold water. It will leave you thirsty, ultimately. And what's the true danger of thirst? It's not just that we won't be unsatisfied for a bit. It's not just that we'll get sunstroke. No, if we go thirsty for long enough, it leads to death. It leads to perishing. And so that's why God, all throughout his Bible, is pleading for his people to come to him, because he knows that if we don't come to him as the fountain of living water, the consequences will be tragic. If you don't drink, we die. If we don't come to God, we perish. That's why he invites us to come to him. It's because our greatest needs are often not felt until they're too late. That's my first response to this question. I'm happy, why do I need God? Well, often our greatest needs aren't felt until it's too late. And so it may be that there is a deep need for God inside of us that we must attend to quickly, as God pleads us to do in his word. So that's the first response. But the second response I just want to run through briefly is this. If someone were to say to me, I'm happy, why do I need God? My response would be a second question. And that would be, well, how do you know that happiness you're experiencing is actually what you were made for? How do you know that happiness is all there is? You see, God invites us to come to him in the Bible for two reasons. One is, as I've just said, is because if we don't come to him, we will die without him. But the other reason God bids us come to him is because if we come to him, there is ultimate joy. God appeals to us to come to him because he is a source of true joy. God says in Psalm 37 verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord and you will receive the desires of your heart. Jeremiah 2, we've seen, he describes himself as a fountain of living water, nourishment, life, satisfaction in him. And when Jesus rocks up on the scene, he says something similar. He says, whoever comes to me will never be thirsty. This promise of joy, this promise of satisfaction, peace, if we come to God. It's like God is this great source of joy, and every other pleasure that we experience in this life is only a pointer back to him. The reason we can experience joy, the reason we have happiness, is because there is a greater source of happiness. And in fact, I think we instinctively know this as humans. We know ultimately that our joys in this life are just a pointer to some greater joy for two reasons. Firstly, have you noticed that as humans we love being grateful for things? We love being thankful. That's the language we use, isn't it? We say, I'm so grateful for this food. I'm so thankful for this holiday. I'm so grateful for this house I'm living in. Even if there's no one we can be grateful to. Even if we paid for the holiday and made the food ourselves, there's still something in us that just says, I'm grateful, I'm thankful. Why is that? Maybe it's because deep down we know that these gifts are given to us from a giver. Maybe it's because we know that these pleasures are only the pointer to a greater pleasure. And I think the second indication that we know deep down that there is a greater source of joy than what we can know in this world is that even the pleasures and happinesses we enjoy in life are never enough, are they? I wonder if you've noticed that. The things we truly enjoy can never last long enough, can they? Maybe you get to the end of a wonderful film and think, I wish I could watch it all over again. Or you get to the end of a meal and think, you wish it could keep on going. Or the end of a wonderful family holiday, trip of a lifetime, and you think, I just wish we had one more week. There's something in us, isn't there, that wants joy, but not just joy, we want eternal joy. We have a sense that we were made to be happy forever. We want joys that last forever. Why is that? Why do we have this desire? Well, C.S. Lewis in his book, Mere Christianity, says that maybe it's because we were created for an eternal joy. This is what he says. He says, creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger, well, there's such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim, well, there's such a thing as water. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. You see what he's saying? He's saying, yes, we have this longing for eternal joy, this longing for our pleasures to go on forever. Well, that should suggest to us that there is a pleasure that goes on forever. There is a source of eternal joy. There is a sun from which all the sun rays come from. And that is really God's revelation of himself to us. He invites us to come to him so that we will know this true joy. You were made to be happy. You were made to know satisfaction in God. And he invites you to come to him, to find it in him. And if you'd like to explore more about Christianity, we'd love to help you do that. You could email care@Ascot Life Church and one of us will get in contact with you. Or we'd love to invite you to join us at our church live streams. They happen every Sunday at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. Be more than welcome to join us there. But again, that's my answer to this question. I'm happy, why do I need God? Do hope that's been helpful and hope to speak to you again at another of these Thursday Thoughts. Thanks.